Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Socially Distant Tea Time with Laura Otten and Evelyn Page, both licensed clinical social workers and maternal mental health specialists. I'm Caitlin Grace, founder of Be Her Village. Welcome to week 9. Is that right?
I'm glad you're keeping track. Yes, that sounds great.
Accelerate view so everybody can see. Okay, week 9. Wow. You look very pretty, Laura. You guys both look beautiful. You guys are getting it together in week 9.
Well, I just finished recording a video, and so I did my hair, I did my makeup, I have the lighting really nice.
You look amazing.
An example of this is not my usual light. Like, I have lamps all around me right now, and a nicely placed lamp.
You look like a virtual therapist. Like, I want to talk about something that happened in my childhood right now.
Yeah, because it was a video to promote my practice, so I'm so glad you did.
Perfect.
That's why I look like this. But you know what? It was kind of fun. You posted, I think it was earlier today, about doing Zoom calls, so to give you an excuse to brush your hair.
Literally, I did that because I was getting in the shower 10 minutes before this meeting, of course, and I'm like, that's why I do this. Mm-hmm. More specifically, because I did have a Zoom call, a business Zoom call this morning where I'm all in my corn bun mess. More specifically, recording Zoom calls because this is forever.
It does feel nice to actually do these things. I'm wearing one of my nicer shirts, and so it does feel good to get kind of made up. And now I'm like, ooh, I need to take some pictures of myself. But yeah, because every day, because we say only the same people all the time, it is nice to take a break from that and wear the outfit that you don't normally wear and put on your makeup and do these kind of things that make you feel special and bright.
Makeup feels magical these days because I'm you're right. You're with your family, and even my Zoom calls have been repetitive in that it's the same family happy hour every weekend, and the same people on my team that I'm talking to, and you guys probably the same thing, clients. And then I put on a smidge of mascara, and I'm like, hey there, wow, you still have it. Oh man.
I do love mascara, so I do wear mascara every day. If I wear nothing else, mascara is the one thing that makes me feel like I am put together. I may not look actually put together, but it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So that's all I care about.
So I had this thought while I was in my pre-recording shower, which my hair is still wet, that I thought I wanted to talk about with you guys because I don't think anybody talks about it, but I think everybody has this experience, but maybe not. So let me ask. Do you guys also hear babies screaming or crying while you're in the shower?
Oh, yeah.
That is
for sure.
Yes, we're both nodding right now. The phantom cries. That's what they're called.
Phantom, I call it the pipes screaming at me. It's ever since I became a mother, even if my baby's at home, I hear this faint, far away cry that I need to respond to. And it's the reason I wanted to bring it up here is because it's one of those things first of all, that nobody tells you, when you're pregnant, nobody says, oh, by the way, showers will literally never be the same. Whether your kids are, my kids are 4, 5, and 7, and I still hear the scream. And secondly, it's, oh wait, I lost my train of thought. But it's this, I don't know, it's our alone time. We can't even have our alone time because we're still hearing the screaming.
I'm glad you said that second part because, and Evelyn chime in too, I hear a lot from moms, and I know I faced it myself of, okay, my partner has the baby or the baby's sleeping or whatever it is, I'm not responsible for the baby, but I can't relax. Because sometimes if right now when they can't escape the house, they can't get away, so they hear the crying. I have that problem now too. I'll be upstairs and I hear the baby crying downstairs and I want to rush down. Or you feel guilty about leaving. You're worried about, what could be happening at home, good and bad. So it's hard to, and then you feel guilty for not resting. And it's really hard to turn that brain off of, I can still love my child and still care for them and be off the clock and actually do what I'm supposed to be doing right now. Because if my partner weren't actually relaxing when I have the baby, I'd be mad. I'd be like, come on, no, this is your downtime. Use it, refresh yourself, and then come back. It's hard for us to do that.
I think that is
Right.
something that I've seen as a doula in our postpartum workshops. It is across the board. And the things that came up when I was running the postpartum workshops was, and Evelyn, you might have been in these workshops actually, so you can speak to it as well, is this feeling of like, my partner, they can't relax when their partner has the baby because their partner does things differently than they do, or their partner is not, and even if it's not being said out loud, but my partner is not as good as I am at calming the baby, my partner doesn't communicate with the baby or know what the baby needs. So you hear a baby cry, and even though they're with a loved, safe parent, it's hard to shut it down. I know I was like that a lot, and still to this day it's like a work in progress to let go and to not undermine him by stepping in when he's handling a situation. And that is a constant battle, even with older kids, but certainly when they were young. And as a breastfeeding mother, it took almost more strength to not jump in than it took to just, take the
One
baby
thing,
and breastfeed him.
yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say to parents too, when I hear this from moms, is that parents, you parent differently, but different isn't bad. It's just different. So, what your partner might do to soothe the baby when the baby cries might look very different, but it could just equally soothe the baby as what you would do. So it's just different. The baby cries when they're with me. It's going to cry when they're with their dad. And what we might do is just going to look different. It doesn't mean that, I have some magical ability, the baby's not going to cry when I'm there. But I think you're right, Caitlin, that the idea of not wanting to undermine your partner, because I know that comes up a lot of like, well, she comes in and just like takes over. So dad never does learn and build up that confidence too to parent and know what the baby needs and respond to the baby too.
It's that vicious cycle, because then if you're not as comfortable, then you're not going to jump in as much. But then it's often a male female dynamic. She often feels like burdened and resentful, but then she's contributing to it, and then he's backing off and feels left out. And you can see how that grows, and can grow into something. Now it's a relationship conflict. And it may have started off very small, and it's called maternal gatekeeping. There's
Look
like
at
a
that.
term
There's
for
a
it.
term for everything.
There's a term for everything, but that is comforting to know, like, that if you realize that you're in that dynamic, everyone faces that dynamic at some point, and to be able to step back, and as Evelyn said, it's different. That's actually healthy for the babies and for the children to respond to different parenting, and to be able to be flexible with that. And the father or the partner is going to bring strengths just as the mother does. And so it's actually healthier for the children to back off and let someone else do it differently.
When I was a first-time mom, I knew none of any, like, this makes so much sense to me now, but as a first-time mom, I made all of these mistakes on my first baby. There was a few things at play. One was I was a breastfeeding mom, and I'd love to talk about the additional challenges, because breastfeeding can be a beautiful, magical, wonderful thing. It's great for the baby. It can be great for the mom. Obviously, formula feeding also can be the right thing for, I'm not supportive of one or the other, but I think that part of an honest conversation about being a breastfeeding parent is that I think maybe, and I'm curious what you guys think, it's easier to fall into that maternal gatekeeping thing because only one parent, like you said, well, it's not like or maybe Evelyn said, it's not like I have something that he doesn't. And it's like, well, if you have the milk, you do have something.
That's very true.
And so when I was a first-time mom, my husband was working full-time, was the breadwinner and sole provider for our family, and in full-time grad school. And I was a breastfeeding parent. I did all the nighttime parenting, mostly out of just guilt of like, you're providing and going to grad school. I wanted to have this baby, so I'm going to I'll just let you sleep, But it became this thing where like the baby wouldn't go to him. And then so the baby was anxious, I was anxious, and we like fed into each other to the point where I was literally having a hard time having my husband just hold him. And then the baby, like he's 7 now, but he's like my most inflexible child, I don't know. And I don't think I'll ever know, like, if that was his personality from day one and I was being super responsive and like, understanding that, or if there was like a cycle where I was teaching him, I will respond immediately. It'll only be me. And there's never any flexibility in this care situation. My second, however, like, I I was exhausted. I had a toddler, I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and I would nurse, and I was much more confident in my nursing, you know. So I think for breastfeeding moms, the first time around, it's like they're not sure if the baby's still hungry. They're still learning the cues. My second, I'm like, he's full. It's 4 a.m. Just hold him until he goes back to sleep. Like, even if he's crying, I'm going to go back to sleep. There was a lot more freedom in that. So can you guys speak to the whole maternal gatekeeping, is that what it's called, with breastfeeding parents? Is that more of a challenge for them, or are you also seeing that with formula feeding parents? Or have you not? Like, if you don't know, that's fine too, but
I think I see it across the board, honestly. Like, yeah, if you're breastfeeding, there's obviously that additional layer. And if you're exclusively breastfeeding, that you need to feed the baby. And, that's just the way it is. But I've seen it too, just even with families that exclusively formula feed, where, mom is the one that can make the formula and make it the right way, and it's the right temperature and all of that stuff, and not giving their partner the chance to learn how to make formula. I with my older one who's adopted was formula fed because I wasn't breastfeeding her, and again, like, both my husband and I had to read the formula label and learn how to make the formula because I had no idea. Mm-hmm. So we both tried to do that. But if you're kind of the one that's falling into all the feeding, that whole schedule, and then you're not allowing the partner to like trade off, that still kind of reinforces that of like, I can make the formula the right way or the right temperature or hold the bottle in the right way and the right angle. And there's so many other things that can kind of feed into that same.
I had this idea that the breastfeeding caused the dynamic, but I guess what you're saying is the dynamic exists, that this like primary caregiver, typically the woman, knows the way. So I never even took those considerations of like warming it the right way, of how to hold the bottle, of like how to figure out when to burp and how to burp and how often.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. If you are type A or anxious, you're going to find something to be obsessive about and trying to have control over. So absolutely, like Evelyn said, like if that's your personality, and this is if you're pregnant and listening to this and you're like, ooh, that's me, I'm type A, I've always been described as type A. This is something to be working through and working on, of how to let go of that control. Because you're right, that person can step into any, especially sleep too. I see a lot with, well, I need to put him down for a nap because I do it the right way so he'll nap longer. And of course, we always remember the evidence that supports that belief and discard evidence that doesn't. I think breastfeeding can contribute to it as far as like, especially the calming of the baby, like when both partners are feeling overwhelmed and it's like, our baby's fussy, just hand off to breastfeed because that's soothing. And so I think that can tip it over to that side. But Evelyn's absolutely right. You can see it across the board. Sleeping and eating are the two big things with newborns. And so that's where you'll see it play out the most, and probably the first.
Great. Yeah. I think what you just said is really interesting too, because at least in my approach with parenting and with my doula work and now with Be Her Village, it's really about like meeting people where they are and not being dogmatic about anything, right? So like I breastfed for a bunch of years, but that fully support anyone who chooses not to from day one for their own reasons. Doesn't have to be adoption or medical. It could like, I just don't want to, but I think part of the thing I bring up with clients, and I would love to hear you guys speak to, is this balance of breastfeeding and the benefits and mental health. Because when you go into like Facebook groups or even certain professionals, that it is like breast is best, breast is only, breast is the thing, which great, like there's science to back all of that up, but in a more holistic picture, like breast might be best because of like vitamins or what, I don't know. But if breasts, like if they can get all the vitamins and all the immune factors in breast milk, but if they have a detached, overwhelmed, totally stressed out mother, there's also that to consider, because there's studies that show, I'm sure you guys are much more in tune with those studies than I am, but there's studies that show that moms who are suffering from postpartum mood disorders like anxiety, like depression, actually look at their baby's face less. They're detached. They're not present with their babies, which is impactful because babies are looking to us to engage. My friend has a 4-month-old, and like we literally, when we're with her, the baby's like, not like, Mom, look at me. Like it's hard to have a conversation. You'd think, oh, a little 4-month-old is just a baby, but she is a full human being that wants to be present and engaged. And so if you have a not stable, mentally stable mother, because of those demands, because those demands can be really overwhelming, I guess it just has to be part of that equation. I don't think it's talked about enough in the discussion of like, should I breastfeed or should I not, is about the impacts of the baby beyond just the type of milk that they're getting. Are you guys, is that a conversation that you guys have with your clients, or are you?
Every single client.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, because and we have in our minds, good mothers breastfeed, bad mothers don't. When you ask them like about a friend or a relative, oh, well, not for her, but for me. I am a good mother if I breastfeed.
You're
I'm
judgmental for yourself, but you totally understand why somebody else.
Yeah, you know, these are kind, empathetic people I'm working with. Like they're wonderful people, but for themselves, they have that judgment. And oh yeah, if you like post up on a Facebook page that you want formula feed, you can be ripped apart.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. So if a mother's mental health is suffering, we know that negative impacts a baby, and we don't say that to make moms feel guilty or judge them for their mental health. It's more of get the support and the resources you need to be feeling better. You're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for your baby, because at that point, mom wants baby is coming first. So it's like, well, actually, if you put yourself and your mental health first, you're going to help your baby, because breastfeeding is not always best if it's at the detriment of the mom's mental health to the point where she's miserable. You need a happy mother to have a happy baby. And formula is often part of that picture. And Evelyn, I think you would agree with that.
For sure. I think there's I also think we kind of look at it as like breastfeeding and formula feeding, like they're like mutually exclusive. And there's so many things along that continuum. You can partially breastfeed, partially formula feed. You can directly nurse, you can pump and give the baby a bottle of breast milk. I ended up exclusively pumping for almost a year because directly nursing just didn't work for me for a variety of reasons that I won't get into. But I did really want to breastfeed. I kind of went into it with my little one, but I was like, this is not working. And so, what alternative is there? Like, I was totally fine with formula, and obviously my older one was completely formula fed. So I didn't even know that exclusively pumping was an option until I started like Googling stuff. And I was like, oh, I knew people could pump, but I always kind of thought about it as like, you pump if you're a working mom and you go to work, and then you have, milk for the baby at home. But I was like, I could just exclusively pump. And it worked out for me. I mean, it's, a different kind of challenge, but it kind of worked for our family. And interesting enough, my husband was really actually worried. He told me, a few months, when the baby was a few months old, that he was worried that he wouldn't get to feed our second child at home, because we had both talked about breastfeeding and he was totally on board for that, but he was totally able to feed our older one because she was on formula and had bottles, and he was already anticipating missing out on something. And when we kind of figured out, and I kind of stumbled upon exclusively pumping, he was like so excited because he felt like he could be involved in feeding. It wouldn't just be me. And it was also nice because he is very good about, doing stuff around the house. So he kind of took over like cleaning all the pump parts and all the bottles, and I pump, so I had help in that way. Right. So it worked out for us. So there's this whole range of things. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
I love that you pointed that out. There's also, just to add on to that spectrum, there's also donor breast milk. Yes. So when I went back to work with my third, and going back to work for me was my mental health care, because I needed purpose and adult interactions, and I would look forward to going to work because it was a break from my family. And I felt like it made me, and still to this day, I feel like it makes me a better mother to have something that's only mine and then to come back to them. But I wasn't, due to a whole array of things that were going on with my baby. I was breastfeeding her constantly. She was very sick, and I didn't have enough milk I couldn't pump enough to go to work, especially as a doula. I was going away for like 36 hours at a time, you know? And so a family member who was also breastfeeding at the time left a ton of milk at my mother's house. And when my husband had the kids and I was at the hospital, he would just go and grab a bag, and it was all, you know, like it was for us to take. It was for whoever needed it. And it was such a gift. We actually, this is like just an aside, but this is like things you never thought you'd do when you were before you had kids. My husband, I was at a birth, and my husband had all the kids and like this tiny little baby, and he ran into a friend of mine who was also nursing at the playground, and she offered to nurse my baby because my baby wasn't taking a bottle, and he said no, and then ended up taking her to the hospital. And I was like, why did you say no? What are you doing? Somebody offered to nurse her. Take that offer. You know, but I think he just wasn't sure.
Right.
You know, I was like more than willing to have somebody nurse my baby. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's not just, I love that you bring that up. My examples are maybe a little more extreme than that, but there's really like so many ways to feed a baby, and it's not just one perfect way for anybody. It's really about finding that balance for your family.
And I want to add to that, it is separate. How you feed your baby is separate from if you're a good mother or not. And we need to break that string that's tying those together and say, like, okay, there's a way you feed your baby, and there's a list, you know, a dozen things long. And then there's you as a parent and as a person, and it's separate from that. And I encourage, you know, the people I work with, and when in my relationship workshop, I talk about this too, of sharing with your partner what feeding your baby means to you. So often, as women, we have this narrative of breastfeeding and what it means to us, and that's influenced by how our moms fed us and what our family history is, what we've seen online, what our friends have done and family members, and we're not sharing that, and we might not even be aware of it ourselves. But I've seen too, like if mom's struggling with breastfeeding, partner rushes in to fix things and say, well, let's just do formula. This is great. Like then I can help out, and then we'll know how much the baby's getting. And it just seems to solve all the problems. But then she's left unheard and invalidated and very upset because breastfeeding actually means so much to her. But she may not even realize that how much it meant to her until that moment happens. Sorry, I just got a call. So I encourage to talk. I know. Let me just bring that person. I encourage couples to really talk about what the feeding means. Like Evelyn, like you said with your husband, like it meant a lot to him to be able to participate, and it was important that he was able to speak up on that and say, like, actually, and that can work with breastfeeding. You know, if you pump and then.
And I hadn't even I'll admit I hadn't even thought about that he would be like kind of excluded if I was exclusively nursing. So like it was really good that he brought it up.
It's interesting because I think when there's a conversation about, at least in like the social media zone, which is what I so appreciate about our tea time sessions, is that it kind of brings like, or maybe it elevates the conversation from just black and white shouting into the void to, hey, we're all many layered different people. But when we talk about breastfeeding versus formula, it's like all about what's best for baby. And now we're like expanding that to, well, what's best for the mother, which is also best for the baby, but also, as Evelyn brought up, what's best for the partner and the whole family, because you can't look at anything in just the scope of what's best for baby, because the baby needs happy, well-adjusted parents. And that's, you know, it's not possible to get that without
and
really
I think Laura, you and I have kind of talked about this too, but kind of this idea that what works has to work for everybody. It's not, like you just said, Caitlin, it's not just the baby. You know, if it's breastfeeding, it has to work for baby and for mom. You know, if she hates breastfeeding, why torture yourself? You know, because of this idea, like that's what a good mom does. So like you said, feeding and being a good mom are not like tied together. They're two different things.
I love that. I love that visual. I feel like I want to make a visual of like cutting the string. Janelle, take a note. Put that on the put that on our Insta. So just shifting gears a little bit, how were your Mother's Days? How were quarantine Mother's Days? Mother's Day? How was your Mother's Day?
You know, and it's funny because you know how I said like I wanted that alone time. I got my alone time. It was wonderful. I just wanted that break and that quiet peace away from the kids. And every other mom I've talked to was like, it was great. Like he or she or whoever took the partners away or took the kids away for a little time. So it was nice having that break. The weather was beautiful. So it was a nice day.
That's great. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I got my break later in the day than we had planned, which was fine. It just kind of, the day just kind of worked out that way. So it was just nice. And we, ordered in lunch. We had been thinking of doing like a bigger dinner, but lunch worked out. And so like our day was, we just kind of went with it, which was nice. And yeah, it was a nice day out. We played outside for a while. And it was just it was a relaxing day. Like I didn't have to do any dishes. I didn't do any chores. I kind of, if I wanted to sit around on the couch for a little bit, I did. And my husband was like very attentive and just kind of took over, whatever. He was very good at anticipating things. So
and now you know that he's capable of that. So even when it's not Mother's Day.
Yeah. And he is, I feel like he's kind of a rock in all of this pandemic, and he always is. He's kind of a very steady person in life. So he is, he's a great partner to have around because I don't often have to like ask him to do things. He just does them.
Yeah. Great.
So it's always nice.
So when we talked last week, I didn't have any plans. Which is why I didn't even share. Afterwards, Laura, you were like, you didn't even talk about it. I'm like, I was legitimately asking you guys because I didn't have any plans, but it was actually the best Mother's Day I've ever had. I have found that I get really disappointed and sad on Mother's Day, which is weird maybe, but I think part of what has happened in the past is that I have like these grandiose expectations of either hugely being celebrated, which is, that's not what we do. We're not like a huge gift giving celebratory kind of a couple like me and my husband. And then there's also this feeling like it will really, really be easy. Like I'll get a day off, like almost like a pre-kids day. And that's not realistic either. So this year, my expectations were zero because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think I was a little nervous about going into it because on Easter I had struggled. I was in a really different place emotionally in Easter, but I was like struggling with the fact that this was the celebratory day I would normally be with my family, and then we weren't, and that was really jarring for me. So this time around, first of all, I didn't need alone time from my kids, that's always been my go-to, but I think I'm like in this, I keep saying crazy, but like this place where we're enjoying them so much more. They're a lot older, that helps. So my husband let me sleep in. So I guess that was my alone time, so I got to sleep in. And then he, in like pure like our relationship, it felt really good. Instead of like trying to compare or do a certain thing, he made a slideshow of pictures of me with the kids, with my cat, who's my favorite like person in my house, and everybody knows that. He photoshopped a picture of my cat's head and put it on my face in all the pictures of me.
That's so sweet. He knows you so well.
It was so strange and so funny. And then he like explained that it was like some would you rather that we did, that I had said, oh, I would definitely rather have like my cat as a head. I don't really remember it, and I didn't even need to know the context. It was just so perfect that he spent the morning like putting that together. And then, yeah, it was just like something so easygoing about it that I really just enjoyed. So I think the expectations were finally a little bit more realistic, but also my kids were old enough to say Happy Mother's Day on their own, to make me their own things. We went to my mother's house to like socially distance, like eat and drink. We had separate tables for everything. It was very responsible. But the kids, I had bought her like a cute little sign that said, all my favorite people call me grandma. And I had taken, you just kind of take care of it as the mom. You just take care of the gifts and take care of the card. And the kids, upon realizing that we were going to her house, all scattered and made their own gifts for her, which I thought was so cool that we're like at this age. Like the older two wrote wrote cards to her on their own. The youngest drew a picture because she insists on writing, but literally does not know her letters. And we're like, please stop doing that. And then the little one, so the oldest one like went and picked out a bunch of dandelions and put them in a ziploc. Like it was like such a perfect 7-year-old gift, like a bag of dead dandelions. You know? And the little one got like a bracelet that has her name on it and gave it to my mom. And I was just like, I don't know, I was just so filled up with love and appreciation for these kids. And I don't know, it was really, really nice.
Look how it was, you were flexible and optimistic, but not, you weren't rigid and with high expectations.
Yeah.
And like, that's great to apply to everything, like any sort of holiday or special.
I'm trying, Laura, I'm trying. We got Mother's Day down.
I know next up is, you know, Christmas, Hanukkah, but I love that, just that simple gratitude and appreciating your kids for where they are and enjoying that stage of their life. Like they're not teenagers who need to go out and earn money to buy you a gift. Like the bag of dead weeds that they thought are just beautiful flowers is so lovely, and the drawing the picture is so nice. So I think that's a nice way to view all of this, of just like, you know what, this is what I've got, and let me see the beauty in that. It's not a bag of dead weeds. It's a beautiful bouquet of yellow flowers that grow abundantly in the springtime.
Yes, and the effort that he put in, like I didn't know, because I got also a huge pile. Like he walked in and was like, look at what I have for you. And I'm like, where do I put this? He goes, I don't know, it's for you. I'm like, okay. But it was like, he just spent 20 minutes getting every dandelion on our property for me. And there's just, I don't know. I guess it's all about perspective. Like it's love and happiness is where you look for it. And he found it on the lawn and I found it in a pile of dandelions. So it's really sweet.
Yeah, that is really sweet.
But I also got sunburned because I was outside all day because it was so beautiful. So another lesson is wear suntan lotion. Awesome. All right, guys. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a good week, and we'll talk next Wednesday.
See you next week.
See you next time.